Добрый день.
Good afternoon, dear friends. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to see you at our panel. And you know that digitalization starts from regulation, and that's why our modern sessions were dedicated to strategic issues. And we do continue, and I hope that eventually at some point we will see the finalization, which is connected with technical issues and applications, and I would like to dedicate our today's meeting to those issues. And you know that the National Council of Financial Market is closely considering that and closely monitoring that. And of course, it is within the framework of our day-to-day work. And these details are one of the most complicated and interesting. That's why we have only top professionals represented today as our speakers, and we have two main regulators present, Bank of Russia, and Ivan Zimin, Director of Financial Technology Department, is representing the bank. And Alexey Grabtsov is representing the Ministry of Digital Development, Communications and Mass Media, Department of E-Government Development. And that's the department which is at the forefront of all the innovations and our main partner for the development of all our pilot projects and access to different kinds of data. And I hope that it is our long-term partner for us to be able to provide our clients most efficient, comfortable, and prompt services. And business representatives are to implement that in practice. First and foremost, our highly respected Rostelecom company, and nothing would be flying, switching on, switching off without it. And we have Kirill Menshov, Senior Vice President for Information Technology of Rostelecom, and my question is dedicated to the perspectives of the technologies which are of most interest for us today will be addressed to him. Bank representatives are also present today. Alexander Solonin, Head of Online Sales Department of Alfa-Bank, and Sergey, Head of Retail and Digital Business at Promsvyazbank. These are the banks which take active part in digitalization process. And we have also our partner in the whole, Pavel Chebotarov, Head of the Department of Sovcombank, of the Managing Board of Sovcombank, and we will also address some questions to him. And I would like to start with the Ministry of Digital Development, because that's the ministry which concentrates all the initiatives and is the author of the majority of them, and is also the executor of the goals which are set both by the government, by business, and by consumers. And we all have witnessed the fact that services for society have ceased to be a dream and now actively implemented. And I would like to ask you, Alexey, how do you think, to what extent super services for citizens will be actively used by banks in their activities? Will banks be able to be useful in terms of the distribution of the services for citizens? And are there any super services planned for business by the ministry? Can we have something friendly for our digital development as well? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for an opportunity to take part in this session. And it turns out that we work together with you, together with banking sector, and you have mentioned that something would be done for banks, something would be done for business, but I wouldn't divide them into two groups, because that's business in the general sense of the word. And I think that business is a logical continuation of the process which was launched long ago and started with an administrative reform when we tried to put services into order, and after that to switch them into e-domain. And time flies and technologies are developing, and now we're approaching the point when we can shift to a different level and we can start working as business, and we can start predicting what a person wants based on data we have, and also resolve his tasks and goals, not in details, not in separate assignments, but for a general situation. If he needs something at some point of his life, we are ready to provide that. And of course, as state, we are not able to do that alone, because any client path, any client's route of a human being can't be connected only with the state. There will be some branches which will be connected with business as well. So super services are super ones because they include both governmental services and commercial services provided on their platform as well. Something which business can do. And from the standpoint of banks, banks are same business representatives, but in some super services, special lots are allocated for that. And now we're using an approach when it's good to do something by yourself, but it's even better to get some pieces of advice and to have some joint work for better results. That's why we attract banks for the development of super services. They are present in all the working groups. We have communities which involve major banks, and all super services, everything we have invented is first represented to them, and we run tests to understand what are the faults, what are things to be elaborated further. And at the design point, we are trying currently to gather the opinions of all the stakeholders, and not to say that we as state know everything and are able to do everything. That's a great thing to have, but still there is a need for advice and consultation, and we work together with banks. Super services themselves, if we for business, if we talk about business as a customer, there will be such services provided for their needs and for any kind of legal entities and sole entrepreneurs which are connected with any kind of permissive activities, and it will be much easier for them to get those permissions needed, and after that supervising authorities will get connected to the process. For the development of business, the overall way from start to the beginning needs to be accompanied promptly with hints, with recommendations, and I think a lot of us faced a situation when it's very easy to establish your own legal entity, but it's very hard to shut it down. And we would like to face a situation when it is easy, both in terms of establishing and in terms of shutting down, and we devise services which are not closed type ones. We do understand that every 6 months or 12 months we will be amending, we will be correcting them to have a wider range of services, to have additional focus groups added, to have feedback provided as well, because the service is to be elaborating, because without development it will eventually die. That's our position. Great. I think the most important word voiced by Alexei, the most important statement is that the state sees space for cooperation and service provision, and for cooperation with business. We can find our own place there in terms of services provided to our clients. And the second important statement is that Ministry is open for initiatives coming from the bottom. And I think that bottoms which are deeply submerged in digitalization process are quite appropriate generators of such initiatives. And I think we have already discussed the fact that those banks which generate something within their own framework can become a kind of an impetus for the development of new super services to reflect the needs which are formed in your business activity. And we do have long-term positive experience of interaction together with the ministry, and for some period of time we had a kind of a technical halt because the ministry was redesigning its strategic approaches, and today it's very pleasant for us that core authorities, core ministries are once again reassuring us in continuation of our cooperation. And now I would like to address my question to Alexander Solonin from the state point of a universal bank. How do you evaluate the need of your clients in terms of the provision of comprehensive services, one window services, and provision of such services via bank, because bank can become such such support for the provision of services, internal ones and comprehensive ones. From the standpoint of super services, it's a kind of customer joint which is connected with customer needs, and everything which has been voiced by our colleagues is supported by us as well. And I think that's a combination of two blocks: super services establishment, and the second part is done by the central bank, is a unified digital customers profile, clients profile, when you can have a vast range of data provided for the operations of the organization. There are two main directions. The first one is connected with attracting and retaining clients and becoming a forefront for state in terms of provision of such services, because we have quite a high level of activity of physical entities and of legal entities, moreover of legal entities, through remote channels, because people tend to apply the 10, 15 times. I think all the messengers are used more frequently. And would we like to do that? Yes, we do. Can we provide everything right now? Unfortunately not, but we are waiting for that to happen. I think that some things need to be more flexible in terms of legislation and in terms of taxation as well. And I sincerely would like to pay taxes not on the first day of not during the first day when I've already lagged behind the period, but when those taxes are to be paid according to the bank terms and according to the taxation authority terms. And I think that if we use such services, digital client profiles for bank services and bank activities, I think that according to our opinion, we will see a drastic change of client experience during communication, during purchases of products and their acquisition, from the standpoint of personalization, convenience, comfort, conversion, all the funnels. And the most important thing is that it will also influence a huge scope of work with such clients, including loaning, for instance, both physical and legal entities. And I think that's something we are working actively on, the central bank is actively working on. And we would like to make our credit system more flexible in some directions. And I think that based on such big data of state governmental services, we will be ready to provide more considerate estimates for our clients, not to overpay for services which are not worth of that, and to be backed up by something more qualitative. And I think maybe private sector is not able enough to reach such a level. Yes, and we are talking about processing big data which state has about a citizen. And we as subjects are able to process such data and to make something useful, to produce something useful for a consumer in terms of risk assessment or provision of some personal offers. The point is that super services, digital profile, and all other services are based, including the data which are needed for financial organizations, are based on the same amount and same type of data. The question is how you use that, because sometimes the bank is only a provider, but on the other hand, banks can use this data for themselves as well and for financial services market in particular, and you can have a very huge quantitative leap made in services provision. So do I get you right that we can scrutinize all the figures and super services from the standpoint of a request for the provision of the overall scope or partial scope of this information for us as users, not through us to a client, but through us, through processing of this data to a client as a kind of a secondary proposal? Yes, precisely like that. And I would like to avoid a monopolization threat in the market, in the field of our services, that is within the framework of governmental services, because there is a wide range of opportunities to utilize that. Yes, this is something to remember and to digest. And I think that anyway, all financial organizations and banks in particular have demonstrated huge interest in information they are ready to be provided with and started to get something which is called an ecosystem, trying to establish serious combinations of possible services based on this data provided. And we had the Department of Financial Technologies dealing with the topic of those services and their combinations. And now we are testing digital profile of a client, of a citizen. And so, Ivan, is there any competition between public services and private services Alexander has mentioned? Andrey, thank you very much. And I think that I will be talking more about problems and something we're concerned with, because all in all, it's quite clear in terms of the development. You see the projects demonstrated by the central bank, biometrics, and digital profile, prompt payments system, and at the same time, we haven't resolved a number of basic issues as I see them. First and foremost, if there is competition between public services and private services, and do we need to have it? Yes, I think we do, because I have been following the situation for several years, and it's quite a clear-cut statement which roots from the fact that a state is a kind of an institution which needs a lot of time to ignite this process and to bring forward some amendments. And the point which is happening at the moment is more about the creation, establishment of a core, of a basis out of a state system for provision of services, no matter which kind of services they are, state ones or private ones. And I think that that provision of state services via bank applications or applications of other financial organizations is our future, in fact, because it's quicker, it will be simple in terms of implementation, it will be more client-oriented as well. And I think that we also have a question arising that we are not squeezed into those limits or beyond the border of this perimeter of banks' interests in some state services. We all know that we want to retain our clients, we want to attract new ones, and also to have profit out of that. So if we talk about competition, we need to talk about the fact that everyone who wants to have services provided, state services provided, are to take the burden of the overall range of services which are included in that. And Alexander has mentioned delicately that there is a need for state data provided. It's a kind of a must-have for them, but they're not ready to give something in return. So it's quite a clear-cut statement on behalf of business, but we would like to see the situation when all kinds of data are shared, because you are to share your data either with state or with other organizations or entities. In some cases, it is not done free of charge, but still it is about data exchange. It's about credit or loan organizations, which are to a large extent consumers, and all the projects which are going on at the moment, they're aimed at the provision of this data and provision of tailored services. But when it's a correct thing to have on the one hand, but when we don't see the enrichment of this process, it won't really lead us to further development. And I think that it would have helped us to increase the quality of our services. So it's the issue of the question to business, I think, to find some mutual understanding and synergy together with the state. But I would like to say that the state is not doing enough in the direction of having services and relative infrastructure combined in a comfortable, available, accessible way, completely secure way. And I think that now we're facing quite significant problems in terms of getting connected to the system, because I have been trying to make this together with different credit organizations, and it's the question of passive attitude of many state authorities which are working together with us and which are providing data to us. And when we were issuing a decree 1471, almost 18 months were needed for the provision of the overall scope of data which was needed. Someone is not giving away its data, someone is reluctant to give its data, but it's impossible to develop digital services under such circumstances, no matter which kind of services they are, public ones or commercial ones, when we don't see complete openness, transparency, and mutual trust, which is the most important thing. So I think that, as it was said in 2000s, we have digital immigrants, those who were born in the era of the birth of internet, when paperwork was more popular, and digital aborigines, which are the generation which grew up in the era of digitalization.
What is going on now? Actually, this is the phenomena which is pertinent to the fact that people don't understand what business processes are to be there with, but everyone actually grabs the data and does want to share them, but the future will not develop this way. If we want to have competitive conditions, competitive market, competitive digital services, right and quality services are accessible to all the social strata, then every party, every counterparty, whether this is the state or the commercial party, they have to revisit their concepts and they have to provide a win-win approach and look for other niches in their future and in their development. Okay. I was very much puzzled by the first part of the presentation that there is now that this is not a two-way street. I thought that we are rather donors rather than consumers of the digital services because registration, this is up to the banks. The registration in the says unified biometric database, this is up to the banks, but you say that the banks are not sharing the data. Probably this is my biased opinion. Probably Paul may add something. What do you think? Are the banks cooperative in that sense, or we take a passive approach, wait-and-see approach? Thank you so much. Let me look through the prism of a bank. We're very open. We promote a number of initiatives helping the businesses. We are developing Superservices. We are attending different meetings, but we don't see some of the colleagues being very proactive. They are reluctant. So we see the client, this is our client, and we see all the components, we see everything. And can we help this client to use our Superservice by proxy of us? If we take something, we have to give something, but we provide for the client's path and we provide for the client's happiness or satisfaction. If a client wants this product and he has to get away from the bank's database, remote banking, servicing, actually then he has to change this path. So if the client wants to get the service through the remote banking servicing, but this is up to him. We need a seamless process. That's why the banks provide a lot of feedback, a lot of comments, but probably there is something missing there. So probably we are lacking understanding, or probably the information is not rammed home to the right people. Let me respond to that. As I noted before, I assume, and I've already said, that the commercial services and the banking services develop much faster. If Superservices can be offered through banks, I would say that this is the right stage for the development. But the clients, the residents, whether these are the legal entities or the natural persons, they actually should be able to get that Superservice whatever they want. It should be a seamless process. But I said that sometimes we find ourselves in the situation when one of the counterparties doesn't want to share the data. And this is typical of the state, this is typical of the commercial structures. We know these cases very well. And it is very important to note, and as Andrew said, we are donors, he said. But let me respond that you act as donors only when the regulator insists on that. Actually, we are fully compliant with the law. Yes, everyone wants to consume, but no one wants to work in a win-win situation. We have to balance this mechanism. We are looking for compromises. We're seeking compromises. But in order to develop, in order to make you develop high-quality services, you have to extend your assistance. We are very grateful to you for working with us in terms of the digital profile. Thank you for helping us to develop this path, which the client may enjoy as a seamless something. And to push us off the button, that's good. But the data exchange and win-win cooperation, I think, will act as the trigger for the services to reach a high level, a new quality level. I associate myself with what you have said, but the question which arises when we share the data, or at least we plan to share the data, actually, and the question arises about the client's private data security. No one wants to see that data being traded in the open market. Once we share the client's data, we have to understand how this data would be used and how this data would be protected or secured. Because, for instance, I share that data and all of a sudden actually it's been traded in the market. As the regulator, as the bank, you have to provide full security. You actually set certain requirements in terms of the data guarantees, and we are fully supportive of that. When a financial technical institute says, give us the data of the client, and actually we don't understand who is going to protect the data, who is going to bear the data loss risks. We need some balance there too. Well, actually, it tends to be a whole discussion between us, actually. There is a nuance which you silenced. I fully aware of the fact that when you share the data with certain company, with certain organization, actually you have to understand what is going to happen to that data, and it should be done with the consent of the client. But you didn't mention a very sensitive to Europe question. Why we see such a negative approach, attitude towards open source API? That's very simple. This is about the competition for the banks. Lots of new companies emerge, lots of new services emerge, and the banks are used to the fact that probably they have their own pool of clients, and part of the transactional business would shift to the new companies. And the bank, if it fails to develop technologies within itself, will become a kind of money storage or money repository. This is what concerns lots of commercial companies. Sorry to translate that into dialogue. Ms. Nabiulina held a discussion for an hour and a half, and one of the French representatives said that actually, and that's all good. And for instance, if a bank wants to obtain a license, and within the framework of the open source API, I granted the data. I didn't grant this data to the regulator. I granted the data of the client to the bank's rival or to the bank's competitor. And this is totally different. So that means that this is a very arbitrary question, which data the banks have to share. You think about yourself. No, I think about the client. I put myself into the client's shoes. Okay, we have diverted from the topic of the session, and the discussion looks very strange. So the bank may share something with the public authority only if this is enshrined in the legislation. We know the scope of the data shared, and this should be always about the secured channels of data exchange. So the cyber security, certainly, this is a top priority, but it can be addressed within some core and competent agencies. And I do think that we have a whole pool of success stories of success, and there are now core problems there. Back to the public services. Quite rightly, you said that it is dramatically important for business that every public service works sustainably, quality, and fast. How to do that? How it will be done, actually, by means of Rostelecom, the regulator, etc. So the question goes to Rostelecom. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm listening to that very interesting discussion, very heated discussion, and that's great. And I have serious doubts that we all understand what actually it's all about. Sure, either people are tired or just we are totally at a loss. Superservice is one thing, and the data sharing is a thing totally different. This is number 3. So we are always jungling with those 3 topics. So Rostelecom, why Rostelecom? So are we kind of a monopoly enjoying the public subsidies? I don't think that half of the audience believes that this is like that. For you to understand that correctly, actually, we have a very difficult situation, and Rostelecom adopted a strategy to be a digital partner of the business, of the society, and of the state. And can you imagine that? It is very difficult to be such a digital partner once the business and the state actually are engaged in such a heated discussion. And being a partner, it's very difficult. No one actually wants to be a partner, to have a partner, because the partner teaches us all life. So the banks don't want to be taught how to do business, and the business doesn't want to be instructed how to do their own business. And we try to build our own digital Russia, but we understand that we have to be a partner in the ever-changing society and the changing environment of the bank. I have certain vision, but I do not know how the innovative financial technology would look like by the end of the next year, because the digital society actually is something which has never been the case there. I do think that will be another heated discussion, when the people who have nothing to do with the data will become the owners of the data. And will the banks share this data with some public cloud or not? So this is a big question. And for instance, if the client denies the access to his or her own data to the bank once actually the application issued by the bank doesn't work properly, so what will happen to that data? The client, the banks want to get as much data about the clients from the public cloud. This is kind of live hacking. Really, the current system allows the banks to download lots of data from the public cloud, but everything is changing in Europe. It will change in Russia too. I'd like to focus on that, but let me get back to Rostelecom and why we're here. I looked at the title of the session. So it's called the public services from elementary to advanced. So any advanced service still is based on some basic things, and everyone knows how different systems work, such as the interdepartmental electronic interaction system works, how the unified biometrical system works, and Rostelecom actually is the one which partners those systems. And the main essence is the following: we are building this new digital state so fast. We are releasing so many high quality and high tech services at a pace which is totally unprecedented. Some banks may take pride in the fact that actually their mobile banking looks very innovative, and we have to make releases much faster. The services, they evolve, they change, and I invite everyone. So if you fall out of that community of the permanent development, we certainly cannot do without the interdepartmental electronic interaction system, and still this is the service which we will use for further development. So I invite you to join us to the web chat, where we could discuss certain plans for the adaptation of your plans. So how we can move to the advanced services? The biggest, the hottest topic would be the digital profile. It would be the most disruptive technology, and this is what we do along with our financial regulators. And we are engaged in the heated battles with the community. So this digital profile has to be technologically fit. And unfortunately, there is a big problem which I hope we can address all together. Similarly, we have necessary technology for the digital profile. And we will speak not about the banks, but we'll speak more about the clients, about the people. People are signing millions of different documents. They use deposits, credit cards, debit cards. We fill out all the necessary questionnaires, and when we pass it over to some unknown people, no one knows where this or that data can be used. We are going to set up a digital profile, and you'll get an access to the verified data, and the state will act as the regulator, and so the state may share this data with the banks. There is another thing to that. The flip side of that would be the will of the person. This is his data. This is up to him to share that data, and probably there will be some time frame for the data sharing. So this is actually like the outset of the biometry. There are lots of startups with the face recognition and everything. And once you roll it out to the whole of Russia with all the business processes which are purely tailored, you know by your experience that biometrical system caused lots of bottlenecks, and the regulator also had lots of troubles with that. And we understand how picturesque it looked like in different leaflets of technological companies, so that a biometrical system should recognize everything. So actually it looked very nice on paper, but in practice it was not so smooth. And next year would actually run under the aegis of the digital profile, because actually a person should be capable of sharing the data, filling out certain questionnaires, and then revoke the access to the data once actually the person wants to do that. I do think that this is the biggest problem. Summing up, the digital profile will be a disruptive technology, and it will give a lot to the people, so dramatically different. And the banking services would improve dramatically, but again, it would transform the digital services. Secondly, in terms of the basic services, we know everything, and we have learned a lot, and we work on that. I invite everyone once again to join us in the development of the basic components. If the banks fall out of that community, actually, they would lag behind. It would be just like a bolt out of the blue. And we will release lots of versions very often, and Russia will change fast and dramatically. Thank you so much. Kirill, thank you so much. From the very outset of your presentation, I hope that we will deep dive into certain elements, but we actually are not speaking about the elementary, but we are speaking about the advanced level. So the digital profile is so comprehensive that we probably can discuss that one-on-one once the concept is ready. And certainly we will have to raise public awareness about that and get the feedback how it may be fine-tuned. But I'm not going to speak about it right now because there are lots of questions. I'm more interested in these very bricks which serve as the foundation. We still have the problems with what we plan to lay as the foundation. This is what concerns us a lot. I spoke about the quality of data, access of the speed of data share. We still have the certain drafts. There are limits as to the drafts, and we discussed for years how to remove those limits. And probably we can remove those limits only once we move to the digital profile, but I don't understand how we can lift those limits. What the digital profile may give us, still we will have to ask for the consent of the natural person, asking about the scope of the data, or the time frame of the access. So this is the same as the draft system, doesn't matter how it will be called. What matters is how it's going to work. What are the realistic plans in terms of how to lift those barriers, those hurdles? Because actually the digital profile should emerge not the day after tomorrow, but tomorrow. But we used to work yesterday and today, and we're working within the legal framework, which sets certain requirements in terms of data collection. Since the 1st of October, we actually have to calculate the debt burden, and it proceeds from the income data, and the income data proceeds from the interdepartmental electronic interaction system, and the access to that system should be smooth, fast, and updated. What should we do about that? Because actually we have to do that since the 1st of October. We have already started doing that calculation, but the digital profile will emerge only tomorrow. What will happen today?
So a lot has been said, and it's very difficult for me to remember what was in the beginning. So let us start with the last question. It's really a major problem, and it is not to be resolved only with the digital profile, and not only with tagging, for instance, because as far as I understand, information state governmental systems do use that. Or unfortunately, it's difficult to say something during this session because we have interdepartmental systems, and different parts of the system live individually and exist individually in a disintegrated manner, and state is to resolve it in a conceptual manner to have digital architecture of Russia reaching the new level, but I think that it needs to be resolved further, and I'm not sure to what extent we are able to do that. So there is a problematics of using those digital systems and uniting them, and I think that we are to resolve that on a different level, and it will be resolved step by step. So it's very hard to comment on that. But we'd understand that in the run of the next year, we are mostly unlikely to see that we will see some significant increase of the system. So that's the answer to the last question. So if you are expecting to see complete order by the end of the year, it won't be in place. Will it be better? Well, no. So now I would like to say what I've just heard. It really bothers us, and I think that we are concerned with two aspects which we have been discussing about limits, stipulated limits, and about the relativeness of all the data to verify this burden. And I think that last week before forum we gathered, but of course we are not to voice what we have invented. Yes, but we gathered and we were discussing this topic because we are very concerned about that. The most point is that you are to implement it. You are free not to share that. Yes, we have several scenarios, and I think that in the nearest future we will voice them, but we don't understand that there are objective problems which are connected with budget financing, and it's not a secret, and we are to resolve it, and there are several options, and we hope that we will do that by the end of the year, and we'll have some practical steps made. It's very important, as quite frequently different organizations come to me and they talk about limits, for instance, 300,000 for applications, and we have 1.5 million clients. What are we to do with that? So that's the first problem. And the second problem is debt burden and the quality and relativeness of data. We had a certain dialogue, and I'm just revealing a small secret. It was a week ago, together with Federal Taxation Service, and we were discussing about we were discussing the fact of data provision about social security payments, and it is possible to be implemented. We were discussing that in general terms, and together with the Ministry of Economic Development and colleagues from Federal Taxation Service are preparing relative offers and relative amendments to the Decree 1471, which will put additional items to that. And we are trying to do that promptly because we do understand that there are certain liabilities of an organization and which and if they are beyond the legislative requirements, then we are to implement that. And if not, it is the question to regulators and state authorities. It is not a problem. We need to resolve it together with the ministry, with the state, Ministry of Communications, Ministry of Economic Development, because without this synergy, we won't be moving further. Yes, and I will come back to that. I just wanted to thank Ivan because he has remembered an appropriate thing about the Federal Taxation Service, because this initiative was not only supported and not only formed in terms of the practical steps, but also was very prompt in terms of technical characteristics provision. And together with the pension fund, we have brought forward amendments to decrease the delay period by a month at least, and I'm very grateful to Ivan for the fact that he has voiced the most significant problem, which is the problem of a systematic character, because we do understand that currently we have the problem with limits, verification of data unresolved, but still we are bold enough to set certain liabilities for financial organizations from the standpoint of standards and regulations. So I think that it would be more efficient and logical to act in a contrary manner. And from this point of view, we have forwarded our proposals for the preliminary technical assessment of the project, and I think that it would be correct to do with the help of the Ministry of Communications, not for the overall scope, but to have some targeted data provided and targeted opinions provided from the standpoint of the method of implementation of this norm. For instance, Nikolai and Andrey have shared the plans, and I think that these technical details are not stipulated on a legislative level, but still we do need to understand it, and so no other expertise won't be able to provide that. So we do hope that you will do that so much, and I'm sure that such high-profile professionals do understand that, and we are ready to provide any expertise you need any time which will be useful to you, and to assist you for all the services to be necessary services to be launched timely. For instance, we had some at some point we had good results with a simplified identification process, and we are still using that. And I think it was one of the first comprehensive significant projects when 4 services were launched in a short period of time. And so now I beg your pardon. Kirill, yes, we just continue discussing what has been mentioned based on initial data which are available in the system. That's our joint work, and we are working together to push the situation forward, to have system more relevant and data more relevant. And I think that we're also scrutinizing the variant of social technological extension of these limits, and we will be ready to support that. And I'm sure that this maneuver will be made together. And I think the third important point is connected with the temporary character of this aspect in connection with the digital profile, because a lot of drafts are created in order to have the legitimate way of access or of acquisition of data, personal data by state, and that needs to be transferred to a different profile, which will have all this data provided, including risk assessment. And I would like to urge you as well that for you to understand the digital profile is something beyond our reach. It is not a dream, it is something we are working over, and in December we plan to launch first pilot tests and pilot technological integrations together with leading banks and fintech organizations. Yes, but just on the contrary, it is almost tomorrow, not about December, but about tomorrow, so the technology of tomorrow. And I suggested that we should discuss that because there are a lot of subtle details, technical ones and others, which need some special time, some separate time for the discussion. Yes, and everyone is also concerned with the fact what will happen to the interdepartmental system of electronic interaction. And so we have two problems, and the main one is connected with mass loading of data, which are legitimate currently, and I'm not enumerating the banks which have distributed this burden in terms of the system which is not assigned to it. And we have peak burdens, and individual organizations are loading huge scope of data. And at that point, other participants of the market have great difficulties emerging in this regard. And the problematics of simultaneous operations is one of the major ones. And this aspect is to become a simultaneous one, a synchronized one. And I think that priority system makes us more flexible in this regard in terms of the synchronized manner of work of the interdepartmental system. And I think that a synchronized type of work within the framework of interdepartmental system number 3 is something similar to the scope of work which was hindering the process beforehand. Yes, if we talk about the synchronized mode, it is not important what is the source of information taxation source of pension fund. It is important to calculate the data correctly if an application is forwarded, and we need to understand how we will be informing a client in terms of the calculations for debt burden. Also, if he is a part of a queue and if it is implemented in an asynchronized manner. Yes, it's difficult to provide you with data. So for a long time, I think we have two variants of this interdepartmental system operated, but step by step we will be moving away from that. So I don't think that we are to overload the system too much, because I think in this case we will be able to do that much quicker. And if we talk about the digital profile, it is still to be discussed. But nevertheless, Alexei, to eliminate redundant discussions about what will be the case and what will not, I would like to support the previous speaker. Interdepartmental system will be in place, and the second issue will be closed maybe in 2, 3, or 4 years, but we will certainly do that, and we are helping regions to do that, for them to get rid of the services of the interdepartmental system number 2 and to shift to the third variant. And a synchronized type of its work is a relative one, because if we talk about 1 billion applications loaded simultaneously, then we have the system shut down. And if it is done in an asynchronized manner, then it will keep system operating. And I think that that's the case when, similar to a joke about cats, that if you do not like cats, you're simply not aware of how to cook them properly. So the same is true for the system and for the third type of the system. So you need to understand how to work correctly with the system and with the queues, how to get connected properly, because we have positive examples of work, and I think that there is a methodology gap, and we are to cover that. And we will be basing on best practices and also on unsuccessful cases to demonstrate everyone which mistakes are to be avoided. And we are hardly criticized, and quite often by the central bank as well, in this regard, that it's very complicated to get connected to the system. But we are talking about data protection issue first and foremost, and the architecture is the following: that if we hadn't had such a system, we would have others, we would have other parts as well. And if we have this, if we had this system initially, the market wasn't able to catch up with that from the very first point. Well, they do exist, yes, but we think that if relatively weaker, if relatively weak from the technological standpoint regions were able to work with that, I think that it is quite strange to hear from banks that it's complicated for them to get in touch with the system. So you didn't hear that from us. Yes, that was a remark by the Bank of Russia. We were not complaining of that because, yes, I think that we have the system and it will keep going, and it's inappropriate to say that it's a bad one because you won't be able to process that you need to work with with a new one. The system exists and it will keep going. Yes, I support you completely, but can we have everyone who is willing to get connected to it to have them connected? Because we need to have a kind of a technological connection when we don't have any bank or financial organization which is hindered from getting connected. Guys, we have been connected to the system for so many years. What we are talking about now, we just see the extension of the scope of the range of organizations which do get connected, and maybe some organizations which don't have a high-profile technological level of development face some difficulties. Yes, but of course it is the case, but we can't have the system adjusted to the elementary level. Yes, we are talking not about elementary, we're talking about high-tech organizations which are unable to get connected with the use of their own capacity. So maybe the process of getting connected is quite complicated. So my only request, if we have something digital created, established, I would like it to be created in a comfortable manner and to function in a comfortable manner. So can you work together with us and with our colleagues? Yes, thank you. So we have been talking about that, right? And basically let us have a look at it from the strategic point of view. The world is becoming more complicated, and the system is not the way it used to be when there was an exchange with a couple of files. So the ones who would like to survive and who would like to live happily in this happy digital world need to keep up with that. I'm sure that everyone is willing to live in this world, but we will have those who will face difficulties in this survival. Of course, we will provide different patterns for those who haven't understood completely how to work with that, but still it is a need, it is a must for them to understand how to do that, because it's not file exchange of 1980s, it's a much more sophisticated system. And I would like to ask Sergey Malyshev, I beg your pardon, for discussing that so much. Yes, we have a kind of an interest club, and we are ready to have new members joining it. So basically, the question was the following. We have quite a serious track connected with biometrics popularization. So how do you think integration of biometrics checks into bank services which go beyond the borders of accounts opening, how it can drive the situation further and become an impetus for the further development of the sphere? Yes, thank you very much. And you have mentioned that we have first regulation, after that we have technologies, and that technologies are impossible without regulation. And I was quite flabbergasted because I just thought that everything starts with an unsatisfied client or a garage. But after that, I did understand that our major innovators or one of the major fintechs are our esteemed state authorities, and fintech is a proof of that, and that's great. I wouldn't hinder this situation. I just understood that the data is at a different level, more to an advanced level, in comparison to immigration, digital intellect. But basically, I would like, we as a bank Promsvyazbank, we are supporting everything which is initiated by the central bank first and foremost. We were quite enthusiastic in terms of moving that way, and we are taking part in this dialogue, and we have launched the unified biometric system, the first one, the second one, and we take part in all the dialogues. But I would like you to remember the fact that most frequently we have other dialogues emerge, and maybe you haven't heard that, but that's a dialogue with my financial director. And my financial director keeps asking me, Sergey, where's the money? And I keep saying that, well, digitalization, we won't have neither cinema nor theater, as the famous movie says. We will have only internet and digitalization, and we will sell everything to our clients via internet, our credits, deposits. So you're discussing biometrics with your financial director. Well, he doesn't completely understand the discussion which is unfolded right now, but he is very good in terms of counting money. And the initiatives we are taking part, I would like to have our esteemed partners, such as state authorities, tend to remember that our goal, for instance, as a citizen, as a voter, I'm for the creation of digital state, but in terms of KPI of my bank and my strategies, I have quite a different thing.
If digital helps me to reach my KPIs, which certainly actually are about satisfying the client's requirements, etc., certainly I would opt for that. My financial director would support me. They're asking if I need more money in order to build that. But if, on the other side, as you have mentioned, the law is there, and we must do that, and we collected what we have to collect, and we shared what we had to share. And if you tell me about the unified biometrical system, any business case, although we are the first bank which allowed to open deposits and to get loans remotely through the unified biometrical system, the clients are not lining up to do that. Don't forget that the biometrics, which you are asked about, this is not about the banking. We can actually collect the necessary data, but probably you know how much it will cost to connect at least one bank branch to the biometrical system, and people are nodding and they're not smiling at the same time. Actually, we would like to have something in response, in exchange for that. So we can create the digital profile, and we will pass over the data when it is needed. But once you say that it is not very relevant, not very updated, and not timely, and there is a limit to the connection, and I'm so naive that I think that we actually can earn much more money once we launch the unified biometrical system. Are we going to benefit, to earn money from the digital profile? Probably. I can hope only that it happens, but before it is enshrined in the legislation, the very idea actually is very cool. And I don't need the client's data, and I'm ready actually to score the data, but this data should be high quality. And I opt for that only because I have to do that to comply with the legislation. And my financial director will tell me, Sergey, stop it. Let's either sell the loans and credits, and it would be much more profitable. This is a very important story. And the question of how we feel that with the public services, fill the unified biometrical system with the services, until actually you can get an appointment to the hospital or across the border using the unified biometrical system. Nothing good will happen. Until we have this gravity there, we will not see that rising in popularity. So the technology is there, but this is up to the public administration to actually add more beef, more essence, that it's been easier for the old people to grant their biometrical data. As for the technologies, we have created that already. Will it be helpful to actually somehow launch the new type of the digital signature or anything like that, or these are independent tracks? Sadly, probably. Before you run further, you have to take a step back to understand what mistakes have been committed and what has to be corrected or remedied so that it starts working. For instance, I have pictures of our physical clients, and every time I launch a rocket into the space, I just check, will these rank-and-file citizens understand me, what I'm doing? And sometimes I put that on a hold. And if tomorrow, for instance, I bring about the cloud digital signature, probably this rank-and-file client, Mr. will not understand me. And people who hold the same dialogue with the financial director, they will understand what I'm speaking about. But certainly you can count on our 100% support, but give us the opportunity to earn money. What I liked very much is that building the digital society, this is up to the optimists, because only optimists can survive in our conditions. Only us, the optimists, we are not scared by the financial directors. We can overcome them, and we may convince the rank-and-file clients. We can invite them to visit our bank and explain to them that everything would be great. So give us your biometrical data, and you'll be happy. This allows us to move forward. Really, they don't have to be convinced. We have to create such a high-quality service that these rank-and-file people will rush to the bank to grant their biometrical data. Actually, this way you can sell whatever you want, but actually you have to sell it the way we do. That's the real art of selling. May I have a say? We can actually soothe your financial director. You can tell them that the unified biometrical system, along with the other systems, actually, these are the tracks which we have already launched, and this is up to the competition among the banks, the ones who want to be competitive in the digital market, if you want to improve your product. So your financial director is sleeping and smiling while he sleeps. I have clients who tell me, give us some services. The insurance companies, they opt for OBI. And then how we may expand that, if we can support that with the banking services only. UBI, this is our future, that city of Alfa-Bank in the far north should also be able to provide financial services regardless of the condition of the ice in the Ob River. Telemedicine and other things are also among these services. I think that this is very right, but in order to provide an access to the wider range of, for the wider range of less technological developed companies, you have, first of all, to launch a pilot project for the vendors, for those who are more technologically apt. Ivan, one final remark, listening to Sergey. Actually, I keep thinking that that's good that we have optimists both among the banks and among the regulators. Otherwise, we'll not have any digital services, and it would take us far too long to get to this digital future. But our optimism is not exhausted by the conference, so let's proceed to practical optimistic work. And Alexei, who spent so much time on the digital services, and Ivan actually was engaged in all the projects, digital projects, which are at different stage of the implementation. But these are the people who are signing us in the work. Your optimism complements our optimism, and I'm sure that we will find something to discuss in terms of the technologies at our services within the interdepartmental electronic interaction system. So we are following the technological roadmap, acting as an assistant to the Bank of Russia, which organizes such an excellent forum and helps us to define our place in the development of the digital society. And we may understand questions which are most acute, and we may ram these questions home to our regulators. And it was pleasant for me to talk to the representatives of the Ministry of Digital Development and Bank of Russia prior to the session. And within the session, I would like to thank Rostelecom, the brilliant company which works diligently and painstakingly on bringing us closer to this digital future. Certainly, this is a huge company with millions-strong body of experts, but they can really boast the excellence in work. Look at the contracts which they sign and the timelines of those contracts and what we have in terms of the interdepartmental electronic interaction system. This is what's been done by our colleagues, and this is thanks to our joint efforts, which I suggest not to give up. The plans are clear, and plans actually in terms of the terms and time frame are quite close. A lot would depend on whether we can help the public authorities to reach their goals. I hope that it will help us all to understand whether we can be helpful to promote these services for the citizens, and especially the big data which will be made of the client's data. I hope that everything would be just great for all of us, and we will have the opportunity to discuss our progress at the next Finnopolis session next year, where we will report on our results. The milestones have been put forward. We have discussed the technologies with the Bank of Russia, and I hope to see most of you on October 24th, and then actually we may meet within the excellent club of the interdepartmental electronic interaction system champions. This is where we are going to continue our work for the sake of our clients, in order to provide for the comfortable dreams of our financial director. See you again. Thank you so much.